There we go. Take two.
I like that still fresh.
Yeah, clapper.
Clapper?
Yeah. Cut.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to get the old drain plug removed so that we can drain all of the oil before we replace the oil pump and the oil pan gasket. So the next thing we're going to do is remove the intake manifold so we can replace the gaskets. Now this is not critical, you can certainly get away without it, probably would have been fine, but it's already on the stand, so I want to go ahead and get it cleaned up. It's much easier to access the fuel rails and the fuel injectors and things when it's sitting on the bench. So some of the bolts are a little tricky to get to. Here in just a second you'll see me break out the long extension, but just go ahead and take your time and remove it, as well worth it.
We're going to go ahead and take off the oil pump. I don't know if it has any problems, but while we're here, we might as well change it. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and start tearing this down. We're going to take the cam gears off, we're going to take the water pump off, the oil pump, we're going to replace the water pump and the oil pump, put it all back together, make sure the timing is right so we can get it put back in the car. What you'll see, in order to take off these cam gears, there are spots on the cams that you can hold in order to take out the cam gears. So go ahead and use a crescent wrench and take those off. Take off the idler. I like to keep these bolts together so there's no question later. Let's go ahead and take the water pump bolts out. Maybe we can get the water pump out without a problem. Alright, so fortunately the guy I bought this from told me he had just done the front cam seals. I have no reason not to believe him, so I'm not going to go down that path and change them again. But we do need to change the water pump and the oil pump, so I loosened this front plate behind the cam gears, lift it up just a hair so you can get the water pump out. It's just 4 bolts, 12mm heads. Water pump's not terrible, but why not change it while we're here? It's a 150,000 mile water pump, so we're going to go ahead and change it. As you can see, it's just a gasket. So we're going to put a new gasket, new water pump, get the oil pump off, get that changed as well. Alright, so these oil pans are put on with just gasket maker. There's not actually a rubber gasket, so they get very, very tricky to get off. Use something you can get in there, break it free. Should break free pretty quickly. You move on my part. The windage tray is actually stuck to the pan, so you got to get that off because the windage tray has a bolt in it to the block. So without that, it won't come off. The windage tray is very tricky. It's difficult to see. But you got to separate it from the oil pan, or the oil pan will not come off. Alright guys, so clearly this is my first time building a 1.6 Miata engine. Of course you couldn't get the oil pump off because the pickup is hooked to it. Duh. So we got to unhook the pickup, we're going to take the windage tray off, then we'll swap out the oil pump. We're going to replace this gasket and the oil pump. Alright, oil pump is off. I'm going to go ahead and put the new one on. Before we put this oil pump on, we're going to go ahead and put some...
So unfortunately my camera died right after the scene, so you don't get to see me putting the oil pump back on, but it's pretty easy. It's keyed, so there's only one way it will go on the crank. And then of course you have to use your Permatex Ultra Grade to make a new gasket.
Tight, you know, did its thing.
Alright, we're just playing this in reverse. For future stuff, we've got to put the belt on first.
You just working that Loctite, that's all you're doing.
Huh? Thank you later.
It's all part of your plan.
I said sorry to the next guy, I meant me. Alright,
there we go.
take two. That Loctite's still fresh.
Yeah, clapper.
Clapper?
Yeah, a little.
Yeah. Cut. That's how it's done.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Alright, so we're going to set the timing here. Here's the fun part. There's two marks here. Intake side, exhaust side. Both of them need to be straight up and down. I here and E. And then there's two other marks here and here. They have to be in line with these two marks on this valley cover. So getting it just right is tricky. I'll do it exactly. Easy to do it one off.
Hi guys.
Okay, so what you're watching here is me and Kyle making sure that the timing is set perfect. Also, shout out to Kyle Shaw, owner of Zonk USA, veteran-owned business, awesome guy, always down to help. But what we're doing is we're making sure that all three timing marks line up. So there's three critical marks. There's one on the bottom of the crank gear, and you'll see that it lines up exactly with the mark on the oil pump. The other two marks are on the intake and the exhaust cams. So on the intake cam, which is the top left, that is about at 5 o'clock. What you're going to see on the exhaust side on the top right, that's at 7 o'clock, give or take. There are two lines that need to mark up with the lines on the back plate. They're sort of at a 45-degree angle. So if all three of those marks are lined up, you should be perfectly timed.
Woo! That's money, man.